Your life.
All right. Let's bring Improvement Service Committee to order. Let it be recorded that Nicholson, Worry, Nenning, Vanderleest are present. Number one, approval of the minutes from a regular meeting on October 12th, 2016.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Vanderleest to approve, second by Nenning. Under discussion, hear none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carried. Number two, approval of the agenda.
Move to approve. We'll do number 7 next, at the request of Alderman Zimmerman, but the rest be approved.
Okay, there is a motion by Nenning to bring number 7 forward right after the approval of the agenda. Is there a second?
Yes.
Vanderleest, under discussion? Hear none, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays, motion carried. Number 7, consideration with possible action and request by Alderman Zima that the right-of-way on the west side of North Norwood Avenue between Dousman and Hubbard Streets be declared surplus property to be offered to the adjoining property owners. Alderman Zima?
This is where the railroad tracks went through. Most of that area where the railroad tracks has either been given to owners one way or another in there. But there's a small odd strip of land that's butts at the corner of Norwood and Hubbard Street. And the person who owns the property right there on that corner wants to put up a fence that would come up a foot or two into that right-of-way area. And it's, first I thought it was owned by the railroad, and then I was in a panic about it. But I went over to Register of Deeds, and for some reason it hadn't been sent over here because there wasn't a parcel number on this particular area. But we've sent the paperwork over. It was deeded. A whole bunch of these parcels were deeded by the railroad over to the city. And the city owns this little narrow strip there that's varies in width along there, but there's a big long sidewalk there. And I think it'd probably be good if the city just deeded it over and they become responsible for any assessments, not the city. I think it's been being kept up by the owner, but there's a relatively new owner that lives there that wanted to do some fencing, and she has a line of cedar trees, so that's why she wanted the fence to be a couple feet into the what is technically right away. And so through a lot of trying to follow a paper trail, and I tell you, it was Tom Geezy. I have to just give a big compliment to Tom Geezy on our staff here that really was the guy that helped me through the whole thing. And it resulted in this communication. So first step is just to declare this surplus property, and I don't know, maybe the director would know at that point, where does it go to plan commission or something then?
No,
Director Grenier?
This would be handled completely at a staff level with, or the committee would make recommendation, and with approval of the report at council, then we would take care of the recording paperwork. Included in your packet, there is a diagram that shows this triangular piece of property that Alderman Zimmer referred to. Again, it's a remnant that's left over from the railroad days that was dedicated to the city. There is no value, it's an unbuildable parcel, so there really is no value to anybody except to the adjoining property owners. There's a total of 4 parcels who would benefit from this. Again, the land has absolutely no value and doesn't benefit the city, so staff recommendation would be to dedicate this, declare this property surplus and make it available at no cost to the 4 adjoining property owners. We would then record that as adjoining, now being adjoining to each of those 4 parcels. It would become part and parcel to the 4 parcels and taken off, no longer recorded as right away. So we definitely support this.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Vanderleest to approve, second by Nenning, under discussion. Hear none, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays, motion carried.
Thank you. I think it does move the responsibility for any future assessments for sidewalk or street to the
That
the
actually
property owner.
still would wind up with that property owner because the sidewalk is in the right of way, and the street would be adjacent to just a smaller right of way, so it really doesn't change anything there, but it does benefit the property owners. And helps make their property more square, makes it a more saleable property.
Okay, thanks so much.
We definitely are.
Number 3, consideration with possible action on request by Craig Baston to have Department of Public Works handle snow removal along Humboldt Road. Director Grenier.
For those of you who were part of the committee, going back to when we had the assessment hearings on Humboldt, again, this was a rural segment out east of the Arnie Wolf Sports Complex, heading out past Fire Station number 7. And there are some rather large parcels out there that are currently undeveloped, large farmed parcels. With the requirements, the federal requirements that come along with taking the SDBG money from Wisconsin Department of Transportation, we are required to provide bike and ped accommodations as part of these designs. So sidewalks are being installed on both sides of the road. Property owners were assessed for both the road project and for the sidewalk, and late last week, or 2 weeks ago, I received a request from Craig Baston, that states to the Director of Public Works and the members of the Improvement Service Committee, in consideration of the unprecedented sidewalk footage, they have 2,296 lineal feet of sidewalk that's being installed in front of undeveloped property, which we have been required to install and pay for on Humboldt Road. We hereby request special consideration from the Improvement Service Committee and the Department of Public Works with regard to snow removal. The entire lineal footage fronts undeveloped farmland. We would request that since we are not equipped to maintain this amount of area, the city either maintain the sidewalks or waive snow removal entirely because there is minimal foot traffic. So what they are requesting is that either DPW clear those walks in the wintertime, or that the committee waive the requirement to have those sidewalks cleared during the wintertime.
Have we done either one of those before?
There was a case when the 2 segments of Velp Avenue were being completed, that the sidewalk in front of Fort Howard Memorial Cemetery did not lead anywhere, so we did waive that for 1 year. If the committee were so inclined to grant this request on behalf of the Baston family, I think what we would suggest is, if the committee wants DPW to clear the walk, we would request that you put a condition on there until such time that the property is subdivided and developed. We would not want to take that on into perpetuity. And I think one of the things that the Baston family is asking for is because that's farmland right now and not developed, at such time that they were to subdivide, develop that into housing lots or other developed acreage, that those property owners at that time would then become responsible for it. And if you have questions, Mr. Baston is here tonight.
Alderman Wery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Grenier, whose district is this? Is this one, or
This would be an Alderperson's Dorse district.
any comments from her on this, or?
Nothing more than to ask if I had received the communication, was I familiar with the area?
And is it in an area
Yes.
where if it wasn't shoveled, is it gonna make a big difference?
I think right now, for the 2016-2017 winter, it probably wouldn't, but that area, again, we're talking about up near Humboldt and Huron Road, so up by Fire Station 7 and the Arnie Wolf Soccer Complex. There are a number of subdivisions up there that have gone in with a large amount of housing development that's starting to occur. I don't know if those housing developments have school-age children, but one of the reasons the sidewalk was required was DOT had us fill in the gaps to provide continuity as far as Henry S. Baird Elementary School. Likewise, coming the other way, there's a large non-denominational church there right next to the fire station, so there are starting to become destinations along there where folks may start using that sidewalk if it's available.
Thanks.
But at this time, there isn't a whole lot of pedestrian traffic because there's no sidewalks. I don't know if it's a build it and they will come situation. I think we'd have to wait to find that out.
Are there other properties along there that may make the same request?
I think it's always a possibility. I don't know that there are many other properties that have this volume of frontage, especially this volume of undeveloped frontage that's only farm field.
Could I ask Mr. Basson if this is a hardship? Are you asking for a hardship that you want
We-
this plowed?
We'd have to open the
Oh,
floor.
I'm sorry.
Want to open it?
Yeah, we can open the floor.
Second.
Okay, motion to open up floor by Vanderlee, second by Nenning. Under discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes, motion carried. Floor is now open, just raise your hand. I'll recognize you and just state your name and address for the record, please.
Pete Baston, 3307, or 3343 Humboldt Road. I'm the son of Craig who requested this consideration. And your question was if it would be a hardship? Is that what you're
Yes.
asking? Could you define that for me?
Well, do you own all the property on this? You say it's 2,000-foot stretch?
Yes, yes,
It's strictly privately owned?
yes.
I didn't, my thought is that, the city generally doesn't do private. This is a large spot, 2,000 feet.
Correct.
I have some property where I do about 1,000 feet. And I have a tractor and I just do it.
Well, we're not equipped like that, and this was, prior to this, we had gravel shoulders, both sides of the road. Now we have sidewalk, both sides of the road.
I guess my question is that, my thoughts are that it's a private entity and, you have responsibilities to maintain those sidewalks, keep them clean. Just like you cutting the grass, do you have to cut the grass there?
There's no need to. There's no need to, like, Steve said, it's undeveloped farm property. We didn't ask for these improvements, obviously, they came along and now we're responsible for them. Aside from the large assessment that we have been put on from the road improvement and sidewalk improvement, now this is a lot to take on for just my father and I.
Okay,
Hold-
that
hold
answers
on.
my question.
I got a question. Does anybody use these sidewalks? I mean, do you see people walking on these sidewalks?
Recreation, I would say, would be the most. I can't really.
I mean, what have you,
The
what have
sidewalks
you
just got. The
observed?
sidewalks just got put in.
My question is, what have you observed since the sidewalks have been in? Just recreation?
Yes.
Okay.
There's no to and fro like a destination. It's
Right.
It's purely recreation.
And
I would
there's
say.
no development on these? I mean, how much development do we have on these sidewalks?
Not on
your
ours,
property?
not on that
I got a
road.
question, Steve. I requested sidewalks over by East Town Mall area, because, I mean, there's a lot of businesses, there was a lot of foot trail. So I requested it, and the businesses were all in agreement, but there was a lot of foot traffic. Now, in this situation, do we have much development in that area? I mean, what kind of foot traffic, why would we put, did Alderman Wisbisky request these sidewalks in that
No,
area?
this is this is a federal requirement. It was
It's
a
a federal
condition.
requirement.
Yep, it was a
County
condition.
project.
Okay.
Condition of
But
taking the
how
money.
much, how much businesses or foot traffic do we have out there?
Right now, there's not a whole lot. Again, there is some residential subdivision going on east of Huron Road. It does connect to the sidewalks running north-south on Huron Road. Connects, again, there's that non-denominational church, which is pretty heavily attended on Huron, and it goes down and connects to the sidewalks serving the Henry S. Baird.
Right,
School
I
area.
understand that, but I mean, towards Mr. Basson's property. I mean, he's got 2,000 feet.
Yes.
I guess I'm not familiar with the area
Well, there's sidewalk on
without
both
taking
sides.
a look at
of
it, but
the-
just 1 second, David.
Okay.
What I'm getting at is, okay, the sidewalks are in, I mean, there's not much foot traffic, but maybe in the future there is. But, I mean, is it a possibility that instead of, I mean, just having a grace period for a year, not maintaining during the winter, plowing the sidewalks until we get more development there.
Well, and again, I think the committee has some pretty wide latitude to take a variety of actions.
Just postpone it for a year and then take a look at it and see how much activity there is.
The only
Or at
thing-
least, I mean, if we have to make a decision, I want to take a look at this. So at least I would like to postpone it to the next meeting.
And
So I got time to go take a look
I'd
at
be
it.
perfectly fine with
Okay. But go ahead, Alderman Nenning.
There is sidewalk on both sides of the street, so basically if it's plowed on the other side, if someone was walking along there, could walk along the side that's plowed and then cross over when
No,
you get to the church.
correct me if I'm wrong, though,
Is that right?
Pete, doesn't your family own
Both
property
sides?
on both sides?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, I didn't understand that.
Did anybody else have any questions for Mr. Basson?
And if I could just let everybody in the audience know, there's a clipboard up here. If you could grab that for me,
Yeah.
Pete, and just pass it around, make sure that anyone in attendance signs it.
Oh, that's right.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Basson?
No, I
If I
moved
do-
to return to regular order
Do
business.
you have any comments, concerns right now?
I guess if we can't come to a decision, what would the other options be? I mean, you know,
Well, according.
is there another option other than just waivering it, or if you feel that we can't waiver it, what else can we do? Would be my-
Well, the example I was trying to bring up is that over by East Town Mall, we had no sidewalks, but there was a lot of foot traffic.
Sure.
Okay. I went to the businesses, I talked to them, they were all in favor. Yeah, people are walking through the winter, we'll take care of it, we have no problem. I didn't have one person, not one business that objected, and I touched base with everybody that was gonna be affected. Now, in this case, it appears to be different where the sidewalks are in and there's not much foot traffic.
Right.
So what I would like to do is take a look at it, bring this back next meeting, 2 weeks, and I'll discuss the options with Mr. Grenier and actually with Mr. Grenier, and then we'll decide in 2 weeks.
I see what you're saying,
Right.
but we didn't request these.
I know,
and-
I know.
And I think that you see that.
I see it. So, and I'm here to work with you.
Absolutely.
But I'd like to take a look at it. I'll drive out there, take a look at it, and then I'll discuss some options with the director, and then we'll figure this thing out.
Okay,
Is that okay?
it's gonna have to be.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for the consideration.
Yes, sir. I'll entertain a motion to return to regular order business. Yes. By Vanderleest, second by Nenning, under discussion here, none, all in favor?
Aye.
You want to discuss why we're going into regular order business? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nays, motion carried. Now we're in regular order of business. Alderman Zima?
I am familiar with that area, and of course, you have a technicality that they're forced to put in sidewalks that they need like a hole in their head. And there's been really no use of it, other than people jogging, they probably walk jogging on the gravel right away or whatever it was before, but it seems to me that, you know, your director gave you the options, and I think the best option would be to just not require the snow to be removed until you see some development in the area, and then if it's still not their property that's developed, but you see that there is a larger usage, then maybe the city could take care of it until they develop the property. They've had a big assessment, really, for nothing, for no use. I mean, it's one of those crazy things of government. So it seems to me, the simplest thing to, and give yourself time to think about it later, but for the next year or two, just waive the requirement to plow it.
I would definitely want to consult with law department to make sure.
Well, you
what-
did suggest that as a possibility, didn't you?
I said it might be a possibility. I would want to still consult with law department to find out whether, I don't think we can just waive it, whether there would be an opportunity to declare the sidewalk closed for the winter. We're gonna have to do something, because if we simply just don't require somebody to maintain it, then I think we're opening a door for a lawsuit.
Well, if you go out there and take a look at it, you're gonna
Yep.
see that it's a useless sidewalk, and I think whatever legally is possible, you should try to help the family there.
I believe I tried to state that
Yep.
before, but I'd like to hold this for 2 weeks, but
Well,
Alderman
this-
Inning?
Just one question. I certainly agree we can hold it up for a couple of weeks, but will the city be plowing one side anyway because of the Arnie Wolf access plowing on one side or not?
I think we would have some, yes, the city's gonna have to take care of part of that walk that fronts the Arnie Wolf property.
So what I'm saying is that
I understand.
if we have the equipment out there, maybe it wouldn't be that much to plow it on one side, the side where the church is on, you know. But move to table it for 2 weeks, or
Second.
until the next meeting.
Second.
I don't know
Motion
when the next
to
meeting is.
hold until the next meeting. Second by Worry under discussion.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays, motion carried. Okay, we'll bring it back in 2 weeks, Mr. Basson.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Number 4, consideration with possible action on request by Green Bay Water Utility to amend section 16.155 of Green Bay Municipal Code regarding compulsory connection to water and well abandonment. Referred to the Law Department for Improvement and Service Committee meeting October 12, 2016. Director Kinnear.
At our last meeting, we had brought forth some draft language, and we indicated to you that there were some issues with that draft language, making sure that it was consistent with state statutes, so we brought it back to the Law Department for their review. Law Department has completed that review, and the statute language that we have in your packet tonight is now fully consistent with state statute. So we do recommend approval of this, forward on for, to go through the process at council. Motion to approve?
Motion to approve by Worry, second by Vanderleest. Under discussion? Hear none, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays, motion carried. 5, consideration with possible action and request by Alderman Slottick to discuss the creation of an ordinance limiting the height of property line hedges to the same height as property line fences. Alderman Slottick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I brought this item forward at the request of a constituent who called me about the condition of a property next door to her. And she's here tonight after I introduce the topic. I think she'd like to present her views to the committee. Let me just start by providing copies of, this is the current ordinance that we have relative to fences. And in particular, I want to point out that this ordinance does make reference to hedges,
Thank you.
although it does not make any reference to the height of hedges. So if you look on the page number 63 at the bottom, you'll see number 3 under the graphic says hedges shall be trimmed or confined to the property on which they're planted. In this case, there is a property that has got hedges growing along the property line pretty much around the entire perimeter of the backyard. And the hedges are not trimmed. So they're probably anywhere from 10 to 12 feet high. I mean, we wouldn't allow a 12-foot fence to be placed on a property line. So the constituent is asking the city to consider limiting the height of these sort of hedges because it creates the same impression as if you had a 12-foot high fence. It has the same impact of blocking the sunlight from the south in the winter, and it doesn't seem to be necessary for reasonable privacy. And so that's why I brought it forward. That's what the request is, and the constituent, I'm sure, would be happy to tell you her personal experience if you wanted to open the floor and hear that.
Okay.
Make a motion to open the floor?
Motion to open the floor by Worry, second by Vanderleest. Under discussion? Hear none, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays, motion carried. The floor is now open. Please raise your hand. I'll recognize you and just come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Diane Weedy, and I live at 1258 Sand Hill Drive in Green Bay. First, I'd like to share a couple of pictures that Mr. Slottick had taken yesterday He was standing next to the subject hedges. That's only one side of the yard. Her hedges are the same height along the west side of her lot line and then on the south side. So 3 corners. So it is used as a border fence. And I know that the height restrictions on fencing is 6 feet high. So I was just wondering why something like that is allowed, to be. And I'm not talking about evergreens or, I'm talking about hedge-specific border fences. I know the city of Madison has them. They have an ordinance on that the height of the hedge fence should be the height of a manufactured fence. They do extend it to 8 feet if it's borderlining like a commercial property. But in my case, it's just a residential area. I feel that without a height restriction, it allows the hedge to grow to a height that requires more maintenance than obviously anyone can handle unless you get a ladder. I know I'm able to trim whatever branches are encroaching on my property. And I do have a hedge trimmer, and I'm pretty tall. But I can only reach so far, and then you've got the muffin top hanging over that I can't reach unless I get a ladder. And I just, I take care of my property, and I feel I'm a conscientious homeowner. And I just feel that it's an eyesore, first of all, and I just think it devalues my property. They really do take care of the rest of their property very nicely, like in the front, they have nice plants and everything, and they've just let these grow wild in the backyard, so. I've done some researching, and obviously the most common reasons people put up fences is for privacy, protection, security, established boundaries, noise reduction, or insect and animal problems. But if installing a 6-foot-high fence takes care of these types of reasons satisfactorily, then I don't, anything beyond that to me is, I live alone. So I don't have wild parties, or I don't have any animals anymore. I had 2 small dogs. I don't have them anymore. But so it's it's a quiet neighborhood. So I don't think it's the noise part of it. I'm friendly with my neighbors, and when they were first planting them. It's a husband and wife. And she planted them on the lot line. And she asked me about them, and I said, if you just keep them short, I'm talking about my side. And she agreed. But you can see that her and her husband have not lived up to that agreement. And actually, it's been roughly about 8 or 9 years, as my husband was still alive when those were planted. So I've waited all this time hoping to see action on their part, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I was just, I told Mr. Sladek that I would rather have a 12-foot-high fence than that. And I know my situation doesn't, what I'm about to tell you doesn't really deal with all that, but what made me come forward with this idea was because in June, I was mowing my lawn in a pair of shorts like I always do. And I was mowing right along where the shrubs are. And I don't know where it came from, but a rock launched out from under my lawnmower and hit me an inch below my kneecap. And I was, obviously home alone. And blood was spurting all over the place, and I hobbled to the house and dialed my son to come home and take me to, the clinic. So I don't, I'm not saying if the hedges were short that wouldn't have happened, but it was that incident because I don't know where that rock came from, but it's, that's why in those pictures you'll see, like, I put a little mesh fence along the bottom there, because it was kind of creepy to mow the lawn in that same area again for me, because, I don't know. I guess that's all I have to say. I'm a little nervous, but.
Any questions from the committee?
How does your neighbor feel about cutting that fence down lower? Would he be for it or against it?
Well, I had told them, or asked them to keep it short, and they haven't done that.
Have you had any communication with him in the last 6 months?
No. No, he's not there all the time. I believe he's a truck driver. But he's home pretty much every weekend. And they take really good care, he's out there mowing the lawn and everything, but,
Maybe it wouldn't hurt to have a little communication with him and see where he's at as far as if he would be willing to, trim your side as well. Tell him you're not able to get up there and do it. Maybe he'd be willing to do it. That's
I
just my
really
thought.
don't think so. I mean, I understand, but it's like, how many times do I have to? I mean, they know it, and they know that,
They probably have it for privacy reasons. I know I live next to a property that they got probably cedar trees that are 14 foot tall.
Oh, yes.
It's a nice property, it's a nice dividing line, and,
right.
somebody said, boy, you gotta, and they have a 4 foot regular chain link fence,
Mhm.
and then they have the cedars that are right down the holes.
And I would love to have cedars over this,
But,
but-
actually, it's a real nice privacy with the cedars there. We can't tell what they're doing, they can't tell what we're doing.
Yeah. Right.
Just my thought. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No,
Committee?
I don't know if there's anybody else wants to speak on it.
Mark, you want to speak on it?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can understand where she's coming from a little bit, only, I think with the unkemptness of it, is that part of it? The fact that, usually with hedges, you would keep them trimmed. The cedar trees kind of naturally grow that way, but if you have shrubs or such that just grow and just go pell-mell all over the place, that's an eyesore. I mean, I don't know if that's just aesthetics or what, but I can see where that would be an issue, so.
The last time I did mention something to the neighbor, he told me that it enhances my property. So that's why I haven't gone back to ask him.
Any other questions?
No, I would move to return to regular order of business.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion on the floor by Nitting to return to regular order of business. Second by Worry. Under discussion.
No, not on that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays, motion carried. We're in regular order of business. Alderman Nenning?
I was just going to say something similar to what Alderman Vanderlee said, that in looking at my district, I can think of at least a couple of places where people have things on the property line. Cedar trees is, a big thing, and they're very tall, and another one is, I can think of a property that has, what are they, like a flowering bush along the property line, and they're probably, I don't know, at least 8 or 10 feet high, but there haven't been any complaints from the neighbors. In fact, both of the property owners in that case seemed to like it. Lilac bushes, what it was. And both of the property owners seemed to like it. So I don't know how many there would be around the city, and what would we do? Just limit it to a certain type of hedge, or would we, lilac bushes and cedar trees and everything else? I'm not sure what the solution is here.
Any other comments or concerns? Question for Director Grenier. Now, I was told many moons ago that if you had a branch or a hedge that would cross a property line, that neighbor had the right to cut off what was over his airspace. That was 15, 14 years ago. Is that still in effect, Steve?
I believe that to be the case based on the ordinance language that Alderman Slotnick provided to us.
Okay.
Where it indicates hedges shall be trimmed or confined to the property on which they're planted, but that would be through planning and zoning department, not public works, so I can't make a definitive statement
Okay.
on that.
Because I know years ago, I just did that to my neighbors because they had, I don't even know what you call it. It wasn't a tree, it wasn't a hedge, it was, I don't know. But I just, because of the city, where I can't remember who gave me the information, I just did it with the neighbors' consent, but one way or another, I had the right to do it, and I had some issues, but anyway, that's how I corrected it, but I just want to know if that was still in effect.
Yeah, I can't tell
Yeah.
you conclusively because it's not under our jurisdiction.
Right.
so.
Now, what's the definition of a hedge? Is a lilac bush, I mean, Dave brought up lilac bushes, is that a hedge?
Again, I wouldn't know. That's probably defined under the zoning ordinance.
Zoning?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir?
let me just add that there are definitions of hedges. If you were to go to Wikipedia, it'll define a hedge as shrubs that are planted immediately adjacent to each other to create an opaque, border sort of thing.
Okay.
So it is possible to separate hedges like this from cedar trees or other things.
Like a
So-
lilac bush?
Pardon me?
Lilac bush? Would
Yeah,
that be
I mean,
considered a hedge?
Lilacs are typically not planted in a row right next to each other. So,
Well, this
Mr.
is-
Slotnick, the reason why I brought it up, because that's in my yard,
hmm?
and they're tall. So,
But it's not a hedge because you don't have.
okay,
you
that
don't
was my
have a
question.
series of
Lilac
them.
bush is not a hedge.
Right,
Okay.
but I think I just want to point out that there is a way to define hedges. So you could limit the height of hedges with an appropriate definition in a way that it would not impact, a clump of cedar trees or a lilac bush.
Okay.
The lilacs in my district I was referring to were planted, several of them planted in a line so that they, I would say that it makes a hedge by having these planted close to one another. I can see the concern here. Have you talked at all to the neighbor?
I have not.
Okay. Because, maybe, I know sometimes forestry will send letters to an adjoining property owner if their tree is causing a problem for their neighbor and ask them, to trim it, keep it at a certain thing. It sounds to me like it's more the fact that the hedge is just let go. It's really not maintained at all. It's kind of the issue here, is that,
And I guess I'd point out it's been let go long enough that I think to try and trim it at a 5 or 6 foot height at this point probably would not be feasible. I think you'd probably kill them.
yeah, if you were to try to trim it at 6 feet, it doesn't take long for something like that to grow. So, it might have to be trimmed quite regularly in order to keep it below 6 feet.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to point out that
No, that's
hedges
fine, Tom.
hedges can be defined in a way that doesn't affect some of these other things that I've heard people raise questions about.
Okay.
And the fact that we already make reference to hedges in the fence ordinance, it would be a fairly simple thing to simply say that, hedges need to be trimmed to a certain maximum height.
Maybe even under the existing ordinance, there's something, hedges shall be trimmed or confined to the property in which they're planted. Maybe even within that, we could give some order to the property owner to do that, to confine it within their property. I don't know.
So,
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
guess right now, I think we need to research this a little and see, how would you define a hedge? Are these other applications, going to be issues as well? And just know what we're doing here. But
Understand.
I can understand the request, certainly.
question, Steve, if we enforce what's in the books right now, wouldn't that cure the problem?
Again, I'm not sure because
Zoning and,
zoning is not under our jurisdiction, that would
Okay.
be under inspection. However.
why is it here then? Why is this here then?
Well, I think there is a possibility that we could have border fences or hedges serving as border fences that also are on the property line, not between adjoining properties, but rather property at the public right-of-way, and I think we want to be all-inclusive. We don't want to do something
Okay.
and not cover all of our bases, so I think if it would serve Alderman Slotnick's needs, I guess my suggestion would be refer to staff for study so that we can work with Planning and Zoning Department.
Okay.
And there may be a subsequent referral down the line to bring this to Plan Commission to address the property lines between adjoining properties, and then we would address the same concerns on the property line between the public right-of-way and the property. Because I'm thinking in my neighborhood, I have some neighbors of mine that the front of the house is on Charity Lane, but the back of the house is on Huron Road. And that is a rather busy arterial county trunk highway, and they've planted arborvitaes where we may want to look at that a little differently in a rear yard where there isn't an adjoining property owner and they're up against an arterial. We may want to allow a taller type of, so I think there's some intricacies here, and I think there's some interplay between public work at the right-of-way line and planning and zoning departments between adjoining property owners that I think there's some work that needs to be done, so I think a referral to staff for study would be appropriate at this point.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Mark, you had your hand up. Do you still want to speak?
And I, just concurring a little bit with what Director Grenier said, I have some neighbors in my district too that have hedges or arborvitae and these other types of plants right on the lot line. So that's an issue in itself. A lot of times if somebody plants something, they should plant it on their property, and it kind of comes out to the property. So in a sense, you could conceivably trim your side and leave their side alone, which would probably look even worse. So I think if you refer this back to staff, I could see that being also included as far as where they should be planted. If it's right on the middle of the lot line, that makes a whole other can of worms. So I would look at that as well.
Alderman Waring?
Thank you. Alderman Slotnick, are you open to staff looking at this?
Absolutely.
I think there's a way forward here.
I want to do the right
Yeah.
thing, so I wasn't expecting that you were going to say, cut them all off at 5 feet tonight, so.
I think there's a way
So
forward.
the questions that you raised were good ones, and let the staff look into it.
Yeah, 'cause I have the same thing too. I have a couple bushes in a row that are flowering, and they're not a hedge though.
Any other questions for Mr. Slotnick? No. Question, Steve, would there be a grandfather in?
I'm sure that we would take a look at a variety of different things. If there are situations that exist prior to the ordinance, we're definitely going to have to take those into consideration. I don't see those instances as prevalent under our purview under DPW, that's more going to be addressed to inspection department, which again, that's why we would recommend a referral to staff for study so we can work. I don't want to kick this down the road and put it in inspections lab. I think we have a stake in this as well. It's a smaller stake, but we definitely want to be involved. We want to help drive this one through and get something resolved.
Make a motion to refer back to staff.
Motion by Vanderleest to refer to staff, second by Nenny. Under discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays, motion carried. Moving forward. 6, consideration of possible action by, or on request by Alderman Wery to examine changing the method of approving and paying for all street improvements. Referred to staff from Improvement Service Committee, meeting July 13, 2016. Alderman Wery.
Mr. Chairman, if there's nobody else here for this item, I'd entertain moving it to the end, because I know there's other people for some other lengthy items, and
Okay.
I don't think there's anybody
Motion
here for this
to
item.
bring number 6 towards the end of the report. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vanderleest, under discussion. Hear none, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays, motion carried. Number 8, consideration with possible action on request by the Department of Public Works to award Green Bay Water Utilities 2016-36. Water main pipe replacements at staff level subject to the following conditions. A, Green Bay Water Utility Commission approves the award. B, delay in bringing forward the recommendation to the next regular scheduled committee meeting would result in the unacceptable delay in starting construction. C, the project award would be reported out at the next regular scheduled meeting of the Improvement Services Committee. Director Kinnear.
Similar to a request that we brought before the committee back at the beginning of summer, when we went into summer session with only one meeting a month, because we have the holidays coming up and the budget deliberations, and that's kind of messing around with our regular meeting schedule, we do have the 36-inch water main project that is out for bid. It's going to be coming back, and it's going to fall during the month of November. And we do believe that delaying the award of that until December would create a undue hardship for Green Bay Water Utility. Just refreshing the committee's memory, the way that municipal ordinance is constructed here in Green Bay, all public works construction has to be under contract administered by the Department of Public Works, which is why we have this in the first place and why Water Utility is not administering the contract on their own. So we simply act as an oversight body for construction contracts. Obviously, if Water Utility is in agreement and they've got the funding to proceed with the project, we will more than likely approve that contract award as well. So because the committee has granted us that authorization to award contracts that would be time sensitive and suffer delays in the past under the CIP with the summer schedule, we see a very similar situation here. Again, we've got the checks and balances placed in there that Green Bay Water Utility would have to actually encumber their funds, and they would have to agree with the award of the contract, and that we would have an unacceptable delay if we were to wait until December to make that award, and that we would then report out any action that we would take at our next regularly scheduled meeting. So.
The only thing I would request, if you could call the chairman and just keep him updated on
Certainly.
what's going on. That's all.
Certainly.
All right. Any other questions for Director Kinnear?
Do they plan on completing this project like in a 30-day period, or?
I don't think it's completed in a 30-day period. That's the issue. I think it's the start time. The earlier we get started, the faster we're going to be able to get this done, and we may actually be able to get some of the early work done before hard freeze conditions come in over the winter.
I'd say make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Vanderleest, second by Nenning, under discussion. Hear none, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays, motion carried. 9, hearing on the charges against Sprinkler Company Incorporated regarding their underground sprinkler license pursuant to GBMC 6.353D. Director Kinnear?
And I think what we're going to do is we need to, we're on the hearing right now, so we.
Are we going to take 10 together?
Well, we have to take the hearing first, but we need to ask 3 times if anyone wants to be heard.
That'd be pretty,
Yeah. And just so the committee knows, Assistant City Attorney Joe Falls, I'll be representing the city on the charges against Michael J. Bainan, and then Attorney Eric Erdman here is going to advise you on how to, make your ruling decision on this matter.
So I guess we need to open the hearing and ask 3 times if anybody wishes to be heard.
Okay. So I just say open up the hearing, and does anybody want to be heard? Does anybody want to be heard? Does anybody want to be heard?
And I guess for the committee, what the city would recommend is, I understand that I don't believe Michael Bannon is here tonight, but I do believe the city has the burden to prove the charges and for the committee to decide on what to rule. So if the committee would allow, I guess what the city would propose is that we present our evidence and then you guys make a ruling after that.
But I think that would be under item number 10. We had to hold a public hearing, so I think the chair would now...
We're done with the hearing then?
The chair would now say, hearing none, you can conclude that the hearing is
Okay,
concluded.
hearing none, so we concluded the hearing.
Okay.
So
that-
basically, what, we closed the,
Yep, the hearing is closed and now we...
hearing is now closed, so we go number 10. Is that correct, Steve?
That's what I would...
Okay. Deliberations and action on the charges against Sprinkler Company Incorporated regarding their underground sprinkler license pursuant to GVMC 6.253D.
Okay, now we would open that up for the city and the sprinkler company to each state their case on the merits of what's going on regarding the rescinding of this license.
Okay. Joe, you want to go first?
Yeah, that's good.
Because we're basically the complainant, right? We got to hear the
Yes,
charges
that's
and
correct.
hear their defense. And
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, go ahead, Joe, you got the floor.
Yeah, I'd just like, Chair, I'd like to call Jason Sladkey.
Okay, does he have to state his position with the city and name and everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Jason Sladkey. I'm a plumbing inspector at the City of Green Bay.
And Mr. Sladkey, are these the charges that you filed with the Improvement Services Committee?
Yes, they are.
And I believe you guys received these a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
And so I have copies of them. Okay. And can you please describe this document that you have here and the 3 pages that go with it?
On Exhibit A, the cover, looks like all 3 are turf watering system permit applications.
All right. All right, and the first page, what is that document?
This is a permit application for 3344 Indigo Bluff Court, project for Joe Jaden from the Sprinkler Company.
Okay, and typically for all these permits need to be filed and approved before the work commences?
Yes, per city ordinance, work is to be, permits are to be acquired before work commences.
And what is the name of the plumbing contractor for the first page?
The name is listed as Matt Danon.
Okay, and then, do you know if that individual worked for the sprinkler company on June 30th, 2016?
Per the discussion from him and as well as an email, he did not. He had left employment prior to that.
Can you please describe what that document is?
This is an email that I received from Matt Danon stating that he had left his employment in February of 2016 and was not involved in applying for permits for these projects.
And I guess I just asked that if the first document that I handed him, if we could just label that as Exhibit A and the second document be Exhibit B, if that's acceptable to your committee. So then, who does it appear that signed the document, if you know?
I'm not certain who actually signed it. I just know it was turned in by the Sprinkler Company.
Okay, and is this a valid permit?
No, it would not. Well, If it was actually signed and taken out by Matt Danon, it would have been a valid permit, but knowing that he did not sign it, it's not a valid permit.
And Matt did not work for the company, and he didn't sign it, so therefore it's not a valid permit.
Correct, yes.
So was there work done on this, at this location of 3344 Indigo Bluff Court?
Yes, there was.
Was that work done without a plumbing license?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and how do you know that they did not have a plumbing license?
Well, I guess I don't know if they didn't have another one, but I know that they don't possess, I gotta make sure to keep the names right, Mr. Bainan of the sprinkler company, I know is not licensed by the state of Wisconsin as a plumbing contractor, or as a plumber.
And Mr. Bainan is the owner of the Sprinkler Company, Inc.?
Yes,
And that's the company that did the work of this project?
yes it is.
Okay. And if we can then look at the second page on Exhibit A. Real quickly, where was this project address?
This is at 3249 West Point Road in the city of Green Bay.
Joe, can I interrupt?
Yep.
Can I ask, I got two questions on the first one.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, is there any, whoever did the work on the first Exhibit A, were they licensed plumber?
This was a new home that was built in construction. The interior plumber, I had inspected their work, and I did the final inspection. They had stubbed a line for an irrigation system. I was told it was not being installed. A couple of weeks later, I was in the neighborhood on another inspection and saw that in fact an irrigation system had been installed. And there's flags that identify whose system it is, and they said the sprinkler company.
Okay. Do we know that there was a licensed plumber on the job or not?
When the house was built, there was, but during the irrigation system, no.
There wasn't. We have proof of that.
Well, I don't have proof that there was.
Okay. Do we have proof that there wasn't?
I wasn't there.
Okay.
So, no.
Second question, you said you don't know who signed that? We don't know who, did Dana admit that he did or didn't sign this?
Danon, the plumber, the licensed plumber, says he did not sign
Okay.
these.
And we don't, and like you said, we don't know who signed this then? Correct?
I do not.
Okay.
One quick question on the same project. Was there, on the sprinkler system itself, there should have been a permit fee pulled out for that particular application?
Yes, I found this project was, the irrigation system was installed without a permit.
And what is that fee for the irrigation system?
It's $50 for an irrigation system, yes.
Reasonable, enough.
It is. There should be, if it's not the same plumber doing the inside of the home, they're technically supposed to have two permits, an irrigation permit and a plumbing permit. Because the plumber that did the original part of the house doesn't take responsibility for someone else working on that system.
Okay. Thanks, Joe.
And now just turning to the second page of Exhibit A. Again, who was the plumbing contractor?
Again, this permit states that it was Matt Danon.
And again, you're aware that he was not working for the company at this time?
He was not.
And then, was there actual work done on this property?
Yes, there was. In fact, while conducting an inspection on the interior portion of the house, I did find an employee of the sprinkler company who was working on plumbing.
Was he a licensed plumber?
When I asked him if he had a license, he said he did not.
So then moving on to the third page. Again, who was the plumbing contractor named on that?
Named as Matt Danon again.
And again, was he working for the company on that date?
He was not.
Okay. And what project address was this?
This is the 3420 Peppergrass Court.
And were you the one that went out to this project?
I was not. My coworker, Pete Skog, was the one who discovered this project had been installed without permitting it.
And then, were you aware if anyone was a licensed plumber that worked on that property?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Did Peter Skog tell you whether or not he knew there was a licensed plumber out there?
He did not.
Okay. When is this underground sprinkler system, when are they typically put in, what time of year?
Generally, it's during the warmer months. This time of year, they're winterizing them, blowing the water out of them. They won't be used again generally till safe not to have any freezing issues. So I would say roughly it's a May till October installation season.
Okay. And I guess my last question is, with all 3 pages on Exhibit A, is it correct to say that none of them were a valid permit because Matt Danon did not work for the Sprinkler Company, Inc.?
That's correct.
That's all I have for you. And I just have one more witness. Probably doesn't know he's a witness, but James Burnett. I just have a couple documents for him. Not sure if he wants to stay there or.
Pardon?
Do
Do you want me to stay here or go up there? Or?
Go to the podium, please. And just state your name, and you're a witness, right? I mean, Joe's
Yep.
bringing you as witness, just state your name and position with the city, please.
My name is Jim Brunette, and I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works.
Jim, can you identify this document right here?
What I'm holding is a letter dated October 11th, which I had sent to the sprinkler company, which basically was letting them know that we were going to have this hearing on revoking his underground sprinkler license. And the attachment on the back was a summary of the charges against him.
And what was the date and time of the hearing?
Date and time of the hearing was October 26th. Meeting begins at 4 o'clock.
Okay. And did it say it began after the park committee meeting?
It does say that the park committee meeting will be first, and then the improvement services will be after that.
Okay. And then can you identify this document?
Basically, what I have here is the notice, or this letter was sent to the sprinkler company by certified mail, and this is the receipt that it was signed for. October 13th.
All right. And then I'd just like to enter this as Exhibit C. That's okay. These two.
You know who signed it?
Oh, sorry. You know.
Yeah, there's a signature, but then underneath it was printed Michael Bainan.
Michael?
Yeah.
Yes,
Not Matt. No, Michael. Okay.
yeah, it's Michael Bainan.
All right, thank you.
And to clarify, the other one is Danon for Matt. So this is.
Oh, this was Bainan
Yeah.
with a B as a boy.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Yep.
So I don't have a lot of copies of that.
Nope, that's fine.
That's all I have for questions. Do you mind if I just give a short closing statement?
Yeah, conclusion, that'd be great, Joe.
Thanks. So you heard from Mr. Sladkey that there were 3 projects and 3 permits that were not valid. He was aware for sure that there were 2 projects where there was not a licensed plumber because he actually went out there and talked to people there. But on the 3rd project, Peter Skog was the inspector on that one. So he was not sure if there was a licensed plumber out there or not. Pursuant to the Green Bay statutes, I believe it's chapter 16, 16.01, the sprinkler company and Michael J. Bainan were in, they violated that ordinance because they did not acquire a permit for plumbing work. And then under Green Bay Municipal Code 16.01, which adopts the state statute 145.06 sub 3, they were superintending plumbing without a license at least 2 times. So this is at least 5 violations that occurred pursuant to Green Bay Municipal Code 6.35 sub 3 subparagraph D. The Improvement and Services Committee may suspend an individual's underground sprinkler license for up to, or I think it's up to 6 months, and may also revoke an individual's license. The city is asking that since there was a number of violations in a relatively short amount of time, and then also you heard from Mr. Slacky that the time where these systems are actually put in are usually the warmer months. So a suspension for up to 6 months doesn't really do a whole lot because you can wait until about May to start putting them in. So the city would ask that the committee would revoke his license.
Okay, Steve, then we hear from the company then, the representative
I
of the
think
company.
we have the opportunity to request if the representative of the sprinkler company would like to make their presentation.
Okay.
I kind of came as an advisory capacity as far as giving you the, I'm not representing the sprinkler
He's not
company.
representing.
Oh, I thought you were.
No.
That's why I'm looking at him to ensure.
I wanna
Is there
hear
anybody
advice.
representing the company?
No,
So basically, they're not here, so
But
they're in
I-
default then?
I think it was my recommendation that I think that we need to prove that they did not have or that they proved that they violated some ordinances.
Right.
So I think if we would not prove that, then you wouldn't have anything to base your decision off of. That's why I want to present the evidence.
I understand, Joe, but this gentleman is here for,
I was gonna verify, assuming that it was gonna be adversarial tonight.
Okay.
Be able to verify what you can and can't do. So my, I guess,
We don't-
presence here is more of a formality at this point, since it's not adversarial, since he
Right.
hasn't shown up. I was just gonna say you can revoke it up to a year if he was asking for it, and,
Okay.
that's when you can give it back, and that's what the
Sounds good.
city's asking for, so.
Okay.
But in a non-adversarial way.
well,
it's-
we don't
it's
have
more
any
formality.
representation, so go ahead.
If I could just ask Eric a couple of questions. Are fines in order as well, or is it suspend or revoke?
The statute does apply, the Wisconsin statute that is, the ordinances adopt does call for, or you can impose a monetary penalty. I think that the maximum is either 500 or 1,000, I have to look at the statute, but there does call, you may issue a penalty, or a monetary penalty.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be either or.
What do we do with the ones that have been installed that we've caught here? I mean, what happens with those three?
I guess what I'll say from the city's perspective is that the intention for the city today is to either suspend or revoke his license. That municipal court would handle any fines, and the prosecutor would bring forth those citations.
Okay. I'll go ahead. Are you done, Dave?
So we could revoke up to a year, is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Is that your recommendation, Joe?
Yeah, the recommendation is to revoke the license, and that you would be unable to apply for a new license for up to a year. That's pursuant to the.
All right. Any other questions or concerns from the committee?
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Attorney, or Mr. Sadke. Were there fines issued, and are they being contested right now, or?
Yes, there's a total, I issued 4 citations, Pete Scott issued 2 for plumbing without a license and for doing work without a permit.
So what are the monetary amounts for each of those?
Our standards is at $691 each, $691
So
each.
you're talking 3,000-4,000?
Right now, yeah, they're over
And those are
4,000.
being contested, or no court, they haven't contested them?
They've been served, I believe they have an early December initial
Okay.
appearance.
What happens with the property owners that apparently paid for those installations? What is their remedy at this point?
The property, 2 of the only one, the Indigo Bluff Court has outstanding orders. The system is not installed compliant with state statutes 382. 41, there were some backflow connection issues with that, and I had met the owner of the sprinkler company, Mr. Bainan, on site. He was going to have this corrected and call for reinspection for me to verify that and operate the system, that it was corrected, and he's contacted me. That was,
But if
it
they-
was summertime, I
But
know.
if the property owners, let's say, got a licensed plumber to go in and look at the work that was done there, make sure it was done by code and complete the work, they could do that, or?
I can only speak, being the code expert for the plumbing, I can speak that the West Point Road one is a code compliant installation. The last I was at the Indigo Bluff Court, it was not. And the Peppergrass was, again, my coworker Pete Scott, so I can't speak to that one, if it's code compliant installation or not.
One quick question also. Did Mr. Beenan have any type of rapport as far as, trying to remedy, that he'd have a licensed plumber be pulling the permits? He himself was not a licensed plumber, so he couldn't pull anything, right?
That's correct, he cannot take a permit.
Okay, so he never hired a master electrician to come in, or not master plumber to come in and pull the permits so they could continue with the work legally?
The work was all done by the time, 2 of the 3 projects, the work was complete before we ever found that it had
So
been done.
basically, he's in full violation of the code as far as pulling the permits, and I can understand. I've been an electrician for quite a few years, and generally you don't go forward with anything until you get your permit pulled, and then you move ahead.
Okay, any other questions, Mark?
Just real quickly, thank you, Chair. If they're in code violation and the work was done and it's still, it's not the code, but what is the alternative now? Do you have to pull that, but do they have to actually deconstruct what they've done? Or if it's a situation where it's okay, like they did?
I think that's what Mr. Slanky was referring to, is so as not to penalize the property owner who did not do something untoward or incorrect. The inspection department would offer the ability to have the permit pulled retroactively, have the required inspection completed, and then move forward from that point. Any items found to be deficient would have to be corrected before approved, or if it was found retroactively to be compliant, the homeowner wouldn't necessarily be penalized. This is an action against the company who violated the ordinance.
Okay,
Correct?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay. Okay, what are the wishes of the committee? Entertain a motion.
Move to revoke the license for 1 year.
Motion by
Based on the
Worry
evidence provided.
to revoke the license of Sprinkler Company for 1 year based on the presentation / evidence of our Assistant City Attorney, Joe Falls. Is that a warranted motion, Joe? Or Eric? Okay. All right, do I hear a second? Nenning, under discussion? Hear none, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays, motion carried. Okay, number 11, consideration with possible action on request Department of Public Works to modify municipal ordinance 9.254 as follows: replace reference to City Protection and Welfare Committee with City Improvement Service Committee. Director Grenier.
We've included some language in your packet that is an excerpt from Chapter 9, specifically Section 9.25, License for Sidewalk Builders. Under Sub 4, it talks about the process for revocation of a license, and in the 3rd line of that subsection, it indicates that the council may, upon giving the offender 2 days' notice and an opportunity to be heard before the city's Protection and Welfare Committee, revoke the license. As those licenses are granted by the Improvement Service Committee, we would recommend that that be changed, that the hearing be held in front of INS as opposed to Protection and Welfare. If the committee were agreeable to that, what we would recommend is that the approval be, that approval be granted to that change, direct staff to forward this to Law Department to place in final ordinance format, and to include on future agendas of the Common Council as necessary for adoption.
Any questions from the committee? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion by
and
Nenning to
refer the Law
approve.
Department.
And refer to the Law Department, second by Vanderleest, under discussion. Hear none, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays, motion carried. 12, consideration with possible action on request of Department of Public Works, discuss master license agreement between the City of Green Bay and Wisconsin Technology Networking LLC, contingent upon placing on file with the city applicable insurance, obtain all necessary city approvals, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the agreement, and authorize the director of public works to execute the supplement license for each site. Director Kinnear.
As we alluded to in a previous meeting, we have been working with Wisconsin Technology Networking, doing business as Mobility. This is the company that's looking to place the small cell towers throughout the city. It has been a very cordial and cooperative effort between the city and Wisconsin Technology Network. What you have before you is a 27-page document that we have jointly negotiated, allowing WTN to place their facilities within the right-of-way. So staff would recommend approval of that master agreement subsequent to the conditions that Chair has read in. And then, again, that's a master license to allow them to operate within the city. Individual locations would be supplemental agreements to the master. Those would be subject to approval at the department level, and the director would have the authorization to execute and sign those supplementals.
Okay, any questions for Director Grenier? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I have one question.
I have a couple
Okay.
too, but go ahead, John.
On the one over on Military Avenue, is that still on the plot plan? I want to know what side of Military Avenue that one was going to be on.
Individual locations I'm not familiar with, but we can definitely get back in touch with you.
Now, when you say on the right-of-way, just for example, there's high voltage lines on my side of the street, property that I own, and they had one, listed for Military Avenue, 9th and Military Avenue. I want to know if it's on my side of the street or on the other side of the street. How is it going to be affected with those high, in other words, high voltage lines there?
They would have to be compliant with all other state, federal, and local regulations. So if there were setback restrictions that the power company, whether that be Wisconsin Public Service or American Transmission Corp., has for height or distance away from those lines, this company would have to be compliant with that. So if they were placing something too close to a transmission line, and the transmission company said, no, you can't do that, then they're not allowed to do that.
Okay. The reason I say that on the same side of the street, on my property side, there's a 12-inch high-pressure gas line and a 6-inch high-pressure gas line.
Correct, and that's those types of situations is why we recommended going with a master agreement as opposed to trying to draft ordinance language, which some other municipalities have done. Drafting an ordinance is exceedingly difficult to try to anticipate every scenario that could come up, whereas if we enter a master agreement, then we can staff can rely on the same type of a process that we use for what we refer to as letter permits with utilities occupying the right-of-way, where they submit a plan showing detailed locations of where they propose their installations. We then have the opportunity to review that plan, identify potential conflicts with other people occupying the right-of-way, resolve those conflicts, and make sure that everybody has a space.
Now, on these proposals, this is all going on right-of-way type property?
Under this proposal, everything would be under city-owned property, and I believe all the proposed locations are within public right-of-way at this point. So it's not within parks or other city-owned property. All of these proposed locations are within city right-of-way.
If I could get the information from the company, I'd like to know that information, or I could contact them. I just want to, run it by them, that they're aware that, I'm sure that they'll do all the homework as far as the pits, like there's two gas pits.
Right, and I think at this point in time, the locations they've identified are kind of large scale, if you will. They've given somewhere in this neighborhood, we'd like to have a location. I don't think they've narrowed it down to the exact where the pole is going to be. That's where these supplemental agreements come in. That's where they actually narrow down, okay, we'd like it 30 feet north of the driveway on this parcel. They submit that to the department. We then have the opportunity, we take a look and say, no, you can't be there, you'd be in conflict with the gas main, and that would not be a good thing. So then we work on the actual physical location, do the modifications to make sure that they're consistent with other occupiers of that right of way.
Would the property owners have any say in these matters?
Generally not, because they're within the public right of way. So it's in front of the property owner, but it's actually within land that's owned by the city.
Just for the record, Chairman Nicholson's excused, so Vice Chair Weir, take over. Alderman Inning.
Okay, I just want to throw out a couple questions here. According to the media reports, at least, some other communities have denied these requests for safety concerns. Some of these are 75 feet tall, some are 120 feet tall. And I can understand the safety concerns that might arise, especially, you know, if we're talking about the right-of-way between the sidewalk and the curb in, you know, in many of the neighborhoods. You know, I see some things in our right-of-way in my district that, you know, do raise some safety concerns, at least for the residents and for me as well. You know, I know that there are some poles, utility poles right now in my district that I'm told, because of all the wiring that's on them for telephone company, different telephone companies and cable companies and power and so on, that for a lot of these poles, they've had to either put what are called deadheads in, you know, a pole that just holds up another pole, or have to put multiple guy wires in sometimes. There are some locations in my district that have 3 or 4 wires going down to hold up a pole. And, you know, residents don't care for it because they have to mow around those wires, but also, you know, they are kind of a hazard for kids playing in, you know, out in the right of way and tripping over the wires and all that. And, you know, my concern is you build these things, and that's with our current pole, the height of our current poles, and you build these things 75 to 120 feet tall, and, you know, you're gonna have to really anchor these things, I would think. So my question is, you know, and we just got this agreement, you know, I don't know exactly what this obligates the city to. Can you clarify that? Do we have to approve? I know some other communities have denied.
Well, I think I'm going to defer to Assistant Attorney Fault, but what I will offer up, and by all means, Joe, if I'm incorrect in this, let me know. This is a regulated utility. As a regulated utility in the state of Wisconsin, they do enjoy some statutory protection where they have a right under statute to occupy the right of way. As a regulatory agency who is tasked with jurisdiction over that right of way, we have the ability to provide reasonable regulation, but I think it's extremely difficult for us to have a flat-out denial. So we can do that regulation either through drafting of ordinance or through this master agreement, and I believe that this master agreement, they have the right to occupy, we have the right to regulate how they occupy. I think this master agreement is a more amenable way of doing it, and it provides more flexibility to the city in how we do those regulations. Still provides the maximum amount of protection on behalf of the city that we can provide.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't it reach a point with our use of our right-of-way where there is a point of kind of a saturation of how much you can
absolutely
fit within the right-of-way? And, I mean, these things, well, you know, I'm not an engineer, but won't they have to have either a substantial foundation or some kind of guy wires or something?
We would anticipate that, but it's going to be up to the petitioner to provide us with details of the construction, and that's exactly what we will look at is with the infrastructure necessary to support whatever their installation is there adequate room to install that within the public right-of-way without adversely impacting other utilities that already exist there and providing a hazard to other users of the right-of-way, be they pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, what have you.
What would be the chance, Steve, of having
Alderman, anything else? Alderman,
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
what would be the chance of having this company come to our meeting? In other words, if we delayed it for a couple of weeks, to have one of the representatives come to one of our meetings and give us a little more thorough breakdown?
I think there's a pretty good possibility that you have a representative of the committee here tonight.
Okay, well, that's good to hear then. I wasn't aware of it.
You want to open the floor for questions right now, or do you want to hold that off?
Yeah, I guess if there's someone here, I'd like to suspend the rules to hear from interested parties.
Motion by Alderman Nene, second by Alderman Vandelis, to open the floor for interested parties. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Anyone here for this item, please just come up and give us your name and address.
My name is Brent Mahalik. I am the permitting manager for Mobility. I live right here in the community, 2772 Rockwood Heights. It's actually Howard, Wisconsin, just outside. I guess I'm here to answer any of the questions. I know there was.
Well, I think you've heard the discussion.
Yeah.
Could I hear your response?
Well, these are, as far as structural, they're anchored in a number of feet. The 75-foot poles are a combination depending upon what the requirements are in certain areas. We've kind of talked through a number of locations, but they would be anchored in anywhere from 10 to 12 feet for the utility type poles. The 120-foot macro poles, which are the larger transport poles, those anchor in anywhere from 10 to 15 feet, depending upon, again, the material that we need to anchor it into. So they are considerable depth. And distance, none of these are guy wired, they're all monopoles. So that's part of the design, is to have them kind of a streamlined design. It's not your typical mobile poles that you see. These are antenna arrays on them. They're rather thin-lined poles.
So are some of them wood and some are
Wood and or steel. Some of them may be aluminum, and then some of them may mimic a street lamp, like you've seen in what we're working on in De Pere is a street lamp sort of design for them. So it varies in different areas, and depending upon how much data density we need in a certain area, that's what essentially they're there for. They're backhauling large data density or large data through a system. The reason why we're a CLEC, just kind of an idea. Picture us as and I always use this image, picture us as that fiber optic line in the air. Fiber optic runs through all your right-of-ways. It's needed to connect point to point. The one thing that we're doing is we're the backbone to all of these new data systems that are coming out. Smart cars, telephone, or the little handheld phones, the tablets, the computers, everything that's going up in the air. We need a way to transport that data quickly into and out of a city center, and we just don't have it. So that's what we do.
Do I remember that you're doing this specifically for Sprint, but there may be other
The system's
carriers?
available to any carrier that wishes to
These will
to
be
use it.
available to any carrier?
Yes.
Okay.
The
And
system's
are they
available to any
constructed
carrier.
to allow multiple carriers, just like a cell tower would be? or not?
We fit under the Wisconsin CLEC and alternate telecommunication carrier, so that the system does need to be made available to any customer that wishes to use it.
Okay. I presume did I read that it's kind of a type of microwave? Is that what it is?
It's a mix of UE relays and microwave systems. So it's a combination of things to get the data out. The fastest transport right now in the open air is going to be a microwave system. Those are going to be typically on your 120-foot monopoles.
And do they, I presume the intent is to get them above the trees, right? Is that kind of what?
Yeah, for the most part, your typical maples and that are about 70, 75 feet in height. So when you think about it, our poles aren't much higher than that. Your water towers are probably 110, 120 foot in height in some of them. So we're not any higher than a lot of those. And the only ask that we have, again, I think it was mentioned that treat us like any other utility that you have coming in the right of way. The thing that this affords you, this agreement affords you, is a little bit better handle. Again, I agree. It's a little bit better position on your side than sometimes we would like. It's a good give and take. It really is. It's kind of a win-win all the way around for us.
Do you have standards of how far they have to be from houses or other buildings where they're adjacent to or not?
No. Well, when we site these, we typically want to keep them out of some residential neighborhoods if possible. And I know we work with all the communities. I sit down. I've got all of northern Wisconsin is my jurisdiction for the company. We are located in all 50 states. My jurisdiction, I visited with roughly 75 jurisdictions so far in the last couple months here. So we are moving fast. We're seeing a lot of jurisdictions, and what we typically do is I'll come in and we'll sit down, we'll look at the sites, we'll see if it's the site's feasible before we go and order up all the engineering design drawings. We'll try to work the location and make sure that it's possible to locate there. A lot of times, your group here is going to know what's in ground more than what we can tell just by looking at the photos. And I think there was a question on line distances. We do have requirements to stay away from, if power lines on one side of the road, we're going to want to be on the other, or potentially co-locate on one of those power lines. That's potential. And we've done that in some of the ideas. But I think there's a reference to some articles that communities aren't working with us so far. I think it's been going pretty well. In fact, Howard just today signed off on one of their mini macro poles. That was one of the, I think in the articles that you've been seeing, Howard was one of those that wasn't working. I think that's opposite of what's actually happening. They're working pretty well with us. In fact, we're working to establish a potential 120-foot pole near their village hall so that they can connect their DPW station with their village hall. We're working out some agreements there too. So, yeah. The one thing I've noticed, before this, I was actually director for conservation planning and zoning for Sauk County, and I was actually their interim administrative coordinator for the last year. When I came on board here, because I wanted to move my family back to where I grew up just north of the stadium, just in those neighborhoods just north of the stadium. So I wanted to bring my family back here, and we decided we were going to move. And this company seemed to be one of those companies that seemed like a good fit, and they fit my personality of working with people. And that's, you can ask your staff, that's what we're doing, trying to get in and really make sure things work for everybody.
If a site is proposed that we, because of safety concerns of residents or whatever it may be, do we have the right under this agreement to deny those?
I think, depending upon the site and the location, if you deny a pole location, we're going to need to find another location close by. Because as the system works out, there's 26 total poles, and there are probably some more coming down the road. I think I told them we got another 4, I think, in the wings, because that came to our system after we already set this in motion. Anytime that you eliminate a pole or you reduce a pole in height, you have to multiply out the poles to get the same coverage and the same density coverage. So it's not, everybody's using these things. Everybody wants these. Everybody wants them in their phone, in their homes. My sister doesn't even have a home phone anymore, a landline phone. She gets all of her internet service through a mobile hotspot and through this. So people want the services. We got to figure out a way to optimize the services and make sure that we can reach everybody. And again, we're that backbone to what your mobile carriers are using and doing out there. We're that fiber optic, essentially in the sky backbone to the whole system. Yeah, it's a little unique. It's a different type of utility. I don't think the stats have all caught up. The state stats have all caught up to what we are yet, and that's why I think the agreement process is probably the better way to go forward, because you don't know what the stats are going to do in the future on these type of systems.
Okay, I don't have any other questions. I do first. Yeah.
On, how about environmental factors? What kind of environmental factors do these poles create?
We're regulated by the FCC. So what regulates all your other poles, we're regulated the same.
Are you familiar with the one that's, it's about a block off Military on Langley?
Yes, I am. That's actually my family's neighborhood.
Okay.
I walked past that site. They used to have the old water tower there in
Would
the
they
corner.
be putting any within that distance? I looked on that map that they gave us earlier in the, months past, and they showed it on the corner of 9th and Military.
Yeah.
And are they still going to add another one there?
No, it's on the north, the location of that pole is on the north east quadrant of that intersection. So, where you have the, I think the music stores there used to be the dentist. I don't know if the dentist is there anymore, but where the old Red Owl store used to be.
Okay, yeah,
Yep.
that's right opposite of my property.
Yep, right
We
there.
have all the power lines and all the gas lines on our side of the property.
That's on the west side of Military. Yep, this would be located on the east side of Military. Yep.
And what would the height of that one be?
I think that's a 75-foot pole. I don't remember
I
offhand.
kinda looked at it, is it a red, was it the red, the 75, or the green?
I don't know, I think that would be.
I don't know.
He's got a map there. He's got a map there.
I'd have to boot up my computer to find out for certain, I guess.
No, that shows to be a blue dot, which would be the 120.
That's the 120, okay, so
Yeah,
that's a
transport.
macro pole. Okay. Transport pole.
So that would be between the sidewalk and the,
I don't remember the exact location.
That's yet to be determined, John,
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
we're
So
in
we
the-
need to look at the in-ground
I
utilities.
think it
and-
probably would, but that would be in part of Military Avenue where previously we were 6 lanes and now we're 4, so I think the terrace out there is wider than.
Sure.
it's not too
normal
wide,
terrace.
the terrace on my side of the street is about, I would say about 10 foot, and it goes down, as you go north, it gets smaller.
Okay.
It's the same way, but they do have more, if you went where the old water tower was, for example, where they tore the water
Yeah.
tower down.
Yep.
Now, that location there is, got a bigger, footprint.
And again,
Sure.
that's part of why why the agreement process is that affords us the ability to identify what's in the right-of-way already, if safety concerns exist, and if so, then we work with the company to move that, if we need to shift that pole 50 feet or whatever it is.
Okay. So that one that's on Langlade and, that's behind that little nursing home there, that's actually part of your company?
Are you talking
Hold
about
it
the
up
one,
now.
John, that was just put in about a year and a half ago?
It's, in other words.
In by the landscape company?
Yep, right, in other
No,
words,
that's a different company.
that's a different company,
Yes.
okay. That's about, was that a 120 footer?
That one I don't recall, but that one was actually constructed as a standard cell tower. So it's different than these. What he's talking about is a monopole, which is gonna be essentially like a utility pole.
But that's,
Yeah.
in other words, that's a different footprint than what you're saying. Those other ones, like that one that's behind there now, that looks like it has a big footprint. They have a
It
fence around
does.
it and everything else.
Yeah, and these
It
don't
does.
have fences, they don't have additional buildings located with them. All of the equipment is housed
Right
on the
there.
pole. The only thing that needs to be drawn to these poles are electrical lines, and you can draw those in-ground right to it, and that's it. So it's not like the series of telephone lines that you see in that horizontal thing that draws your eyes to these poles. These are individual, single poles.
If you go in your packet, John, in the back, we had a representative pictures of what the antenna materials would look like on the very back.
I see what you got.
Those are some sample type
Okay.
installations. The only thing that'll be a little bit different with the ones in the city are these ones, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brent, I don't think these ones showed the electric services on them. These are some
Yeah,
pictures that I
they-
think we originally got from you and you.
Yeah, they may
early
not.
on.
So these electrical services can be put underground as well? And they feed them underground more than likely?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that answers my questions then.
Yeah, we've signed agreements with the city of Milwaukee already, so that's another one that's, I looked over this agreement, this one's pretty favorable.
Okay, any other questions, Alderman?
I would just like to ask our attorney, our legal staff, you reviewed this and you feel that it protects the city as much as we can?
Yeah, I've worked closely with Jim and Tom Geesey on this, and Kristen as well. And we've reviewed it, we've gone back and forth, and we feel like this is, protects the city pretty well. And I think what Steve said is, we either have to do an ordinance there, it's one shoe, or one size fits all, or we do a license where you can kind of work with the company a little bit more and set up some spots where we think is favorable for the city and for the company. But what I'd recommend for the committee and for the council too is to go through that document, and if you have any questions, give me a call or send me an email, and I'll be more than happy to talk with you guys about any questions you guys have.
Well, should we table it tonight and share this with our colleagues on the council so everybody knows what's happening here? Should we-
Well, first, if we don't have any other questions, thank you, Mr. Mahalik. I'll entertain a motion to return to regular order.
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Nenning, second by Alderman Vanderleest. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Alderman Nenning?
Yeah, I guess what would be the best way to handle this? I definitely think that there's a need to let all of our colleagues on the council know what's proposed here, and also for us to read this in a little more detail. We just got it in front of us tonight. It may be the best we can we can do under the public service regulations, but, so what is the best thing, that we give a tentative approval tonight and between now and the council meeting?
I think, I leave that to the committee to ultimately choose, but I think it's up to you guys if you want to, you can either approve it tonight, deny it tonight, whatever you want to do, as long as I think the council at some point is going to have to, they're all going to have to look it over, and it's going to have to be approved by them anyways. I think this should go to the next meeting, and next common council meeting, and you guys can decide what to do there. You don't have to approve it that night if you don't feel comfortable, or you can, if you go through it and feel comfortable with it before then, you can approve it at that meeting. So
At
it's,
the next council meeting is the one where the budget is going to be adopted. It may very well be a late meeting, and I know some of the other committees are talking about delaying some items to the following meeting so that the council, the budget meeting doesn't get to be too long on issues like this. I think there will be a lot of questions on this by other council members, and so I don't know. Is there, I presume it's probably not going to be any installations this year, is there? Or do I know that?
No, probably you're looking at early part of the spring. But we need, if that's the case, we
So there's probably
need to.
time to take a good look at it and
Bring it back in
bring it
December.
back. Sure,
I'd support that motion. Bring it back.
that's my motion.
There's a motion by Alderman Ennick, second by Alderman Vanderleest, to hold this in until December.
And with that, I don't think it needs to be part of the motion, but just edification for the committee. Staff will ensure that a copy of this document is placed into all alderman mailboxes.
Yeah, maybe a cover memo that explains what it's all about.
Sure.
And perhaps the little map with the locations too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else on that? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Mahalik. So this will come back in our next meeting in December.
At
So-
our December meeting. now that-
And then from there, we'll go to council.
Okay.
I don't know what the date's going to be, but we'll figure that out.
I think it's December
Let's say the
5th, 8th, something like that.
In the meantime, the rest of the council will get the agreement, and if they have questions, they can come back here again.
Okay, so is there a point where you want me back before the council, before that December meeting, or is it?
Not before, no.
No, I think what we'd be
Oh,
looking
okay.
at is, it's going to be an early,
Perhaps.
7th, 14th, I think it's December 14th would be our next regularly scheduled meeting. Or,
No.
it would be the meeting that we would want you to come back for. But we will notify you.
You let me know.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Number 13, consideration with possible action on report of the purchasing manager. A, request approval to award contract to Trucko Equipment, Inc. to make chassis frame modifications to 4 trucks for $36,800. Well, sir.
Thank you. First thing I'd like to do is amend the agenda item. The 36,800 was a preliminary number. We added some brake work on top of that. The number in the table and on the bid tabulation, which is attached, is correct. The number that we're requesting approval is $47,450.
$47,450.
Right.
It is still for truck equipment, though. Okay.
Steve may be better positioned to give us a background. My understanding is that the city owns some chassis that still have some usable life, and we want to mount some rear-loading compactor bodies on those chassis that went into storage when we went to automated recycling and trash. In order to make those bodies work, we needed to lengthen the frames, make some axle changes, and so we bid that work out. We received 3 bids, and we're recommending an award to the low bidder, which is Truck Equipment Incorporated, for $47,450.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Alderman Vanderleest to approve.
Second.
Second by Alderman Nenning. Any discussion? Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Oh. Motion carried.
We'll finish the motion, I just have a point that I wanted to make.
Yes.
Thank
Alderman.
you, Chair. I just talked to Rick briefly. He waited here an hour and 45 minutes to make this very short point. It would be nice to have him, you know, in the future, moved up.
You're
to the
assuming
beginning.
Rick doesn't want to sit through.
Well, he- I don't know.
I think he's actually requested to be
Yes,
last.
Yes.
Have you? Is that a request?
You're correct, though.
Oh, yeah, that's always nice, but, you know, in fairness, I submitted mine very late because, you know, we just opened this bid the day the agendas were due, so I'm not complaining.
Well, no, but I think in that sense, I mean, you can
You're right,
still
though.
have a
It
request
should be,
to moved
they're usually
closer
pretty
up.
quick items. They should be moved up to
It should-
the
it
I
should be
agree.
moved up.
Lunch is getting cold, right, Rick?
All right. Good
That's
point.
just my
No,
point.
excellent point, Alderman Steuer. Thanks. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Grenier, what are they actually gonna use those trucks for now? How's it gonna help the Department of Public Works?
I believe these are going to be used for leaf collection in bulk.
That sounds like a good method
The west
then,
side.
because there's a lot of
I
leaves
think-
flying.
I think actually two are going east, two going west.
Okay. All right, number 14, Director's Report on recent activities of the Public Works Department.
Well, I think we should probably.
No, we're going to go back,
page
that's
6.
right. We jumped over that one. 6, consideration with possible action on request by Alderman Weary to examine changing the method of approving and paying for all street improvements, referred to staff from INS July 13th. This is actually, I think, Alderman Galvin and Alderman Dorf all had similar kind of requests, so.
So I've included a copy of a report in your packets. I stepped out during the hearing because it looks to me that pages 3 and 4 were inadvertently omitted. So I want to make some photocopies of those 2 pages. Alder Steuer, if you'd like, I've got a copy of the report up here for you.
Thank you.
Do you have another 3 and 4? Oh, is that, I think, give you the same thing, or is that?
Yeah, John's got 2.
That one.
Yeah, it's two-sided.
Backside, there. How efficient.
And similar to the discussion regarding the mobility master agreement, we will be making this report available to all alders more than likely tomorrow. So just by way of background, on June 21st, Alderman Weary did forward a communication requesting that we examine the method of approving and paying for street improvements. Prior to that, on June 2nd, Alderman Galvin submitted an email communication requesting staff take a look at a wheel tax as a means to offset the cost of special assessments used for funding street improvements. So we prepared a report that examines both of those points, also describes the current process used by the city of Green Bay to fund road improvements, and compare funding from other municipalities around the state. To assist us in gathering information for this report, City of Green Bay staff did request information on special assessments from the 15 largest municipalities in Wisconsin by population, as well as the surrounding municipalities within Brown County. We did not receive formal responses from Milwaukee, Madison, Fond du Lac, and Wauwatosa. However, we did review their codes of ordinances, and in all 4 cases, the ordinances did indicate that there were special assessments applicable in those municipalities. So, taking a look at the current process for funding road improvement projects in the city of Green Bay, it's a variable process, and it depended upon how the request for the improvements initiated and the functional classification. Some of the projects that you may be more familiar with are the larger state projects that are funded under the Surface Transportation Block Grant, or STBG. These are our Military Avenue, our Monroe Avenue, Belt Avenue, and recently we were selected for projects on Mather and Gray Streets and the Webster Avenue corridor. So those are match fund projects where the state and federal governments participate. The minimum participation level is 50% federal, 50% local, and the maximum rate of participation is an 80% state fed, 20% local split. Okay? Not so much what we're talking about under this report, but they still do have some applicability. For residential streets, we do have an option where the developer can build the street, and if the developer constructs the street at his sole cost and then dedicates the improvement over to the public, there winds up being no assessment because the developer's paying full freight on those types of projects. There are several municipalities around the state of Wisconsin, like Oshkosh, Janesville, De Pere, and Ashwaubenon, who also offer that type of an approach. One of the programs that you are more familiar with is our asphalt resurfacing program. Ours is a hybrid program. There are some municipalities who simply take 3 inches of blacktop off and put 3 inches of new asphalt down, and that's their resurfacing program. City of Green Bay, we actually go through and assess the condition of the utilities, the sanitary storm and water that's underneath that street. If there's less than 20 years of life in any of those, we don't want to dig up a new street that somebody paid assessments on to fix a water main or a sanitary sewer 10 years after the fact. So we'll go ahead and make whatever improvements need to be made to get the life out of those utilities. We take a look at the base course under the street when we take the asphalt off. If base course needs modification or adjustment, we do that. And any curb and gutter repairs that are necessary at the time, we take care of all of that. Several of the surrounding municipalities and municipalities that we did talk to assess for base work and curb and gutter work separate from the street assessment. Taking a look at the municipalities, Eau Claire, Oshkosh, Sheboygan, and Bellevue, along with the city of Green Bay, do levy special assessments for street resurfacing. These assessments range from a low of 35% of the project cost for an arterial street in Eau Claire to a high of 100% in Bellevue. Bellevue fully assesses their roads. By way of comparison, our assessment is intended to cover 60% of the cost of the asphalt work. So 40% of the cost of the asphalt, any curb and gutter, and any base repair is all part of the levy-supported borrowing. This translates to approximately 28% of the total project cost just for the street work, okay, over the past 5 years. So this puts Green Bay on the very low end of the spectrum compared to other municipalities that do assess. However, we do want to note that many municipalities do not assess for resurfacing, including Kenosha, Racine, Appleton, Janesville, La Crosse, De Pere, Ashwaubenon, Howard, and Swamico. For new city streets that are constructed under city contract or reconstructed streets, this is on the pages 3 and 4, or no, this is still on page 2. So the old way of doing subdivisions.
Page 2.
Also,
Have a 1, 3.
That's right, we don't have two.
oh, so you
That's
got
what I
one
was
more
reading.
Okay, well,
That's all right. I'll get that to us.
okay. I will make sure that all 12 alders get brand new copies of this report in your mailbox tomorrow. So any new streets that a developer comes in and says he wants to build a subdivision, he does a plat and then turns it over to the city, and we do the design and construction of a subdivision. Anything that fits that scenario, or all reconstructed streets. Assessments are levied against adjoining property owners using what's referred to as an assessment factor. And the assessment factor is intended to be equivalent to the cost of cost of construction of a new street in a previously undeveloped area, or a farm field street, divided by the assessable frontage along that street. The AF may be discounted based on the type of construction or reconstruction proposed and the zoning of the property. So pulling from our assessment ordinance, we provided you with the assessment factors that we utilized. For what's referred to as a type A street, which no previous construction, so brand new street. Everybody pays 100% of the assessment factor, residential, institutional, and other zone classifications. For a type B street, which is a rural street, no curb and gutter, and we're urbanizing. So we're rebuilding the entire street, but putting curb and gutter in. Bituminous pavements, residential zones are assessed at 60%. All other zoning classifications are assessed at 90% of the assessment factor. Type C street, which is typically what we're used to seeing, a fully improved resident or urbanized street with curb and gutter that gets reconstructed. 30% residentially zoned properties are assessed at 30% of the assessment factor. All other zoning classifications are assessed at 65% of the assessment factor. when we take a look at this, other municipalities reporting that they levy special assessments for reconstruction of streets range from a low of 40% of the total project cost in Eau Claire to a high of 100% of the total project cost in Bellevue. Again, Bellevue fully assesses their streets. We do also assess levy assessments against adjoining properties for reconstructed streets in Green Bay that are impacted by alternate funding such as the Surface Transportation Block Grant, STBG funds. However, in those cases where we have STBG, state law prohibits us from making money on assessments, so individual project-specific assessment rates are calculated for those and have not been included as part of our analysis. Most municipalities who answered our request for information indicated that a variety of funding sources are utilized. These sources include, but are not limited to, levy-supported borrowing, tax levy budget funds, tax increment financing district funding, local road improvement project funds, which are federal funds administered through the state, surface transportation block grant, and community development block grant funding. The funding sources are consistent with how projects are similarly funded in Green Bay, but they do vary based on the percentage of each funding mechanism used by the municipality. For those municipalities reporting that they levied assessments for reconstruct, again, low of 40% in Eau Claire to a high of 100% in Bellevue. By way of comparison, Green Bay has averaged a recovery of approximately 12% of the total project cost for a reconstructed street over the past 5 years. We also asked the other municipalities to identify the total average amount of expenditure for local road improvement projects, the percentage of centerline miles improved annually, and the total amount of centerline miles within their jurisdiction. We did provide a table in there. Green Bay's at about $3.6 million. We improved 1% to 2% of our centerline miles annually, and we have a total of about 416 local centerline miles. You can see Racine is at 5.2 million. They do about 1%. Oshkosh did not report their expenditure, but they're 1 to 1.5%. Eau Claire spends about $6.1 million and does 2% on 346 miles. Janesville's at 3.3 million a year, and they do about 3.5%. La Crosse, $2 million a year, 1.4%. De Pere spends about $5 million a year, accomplishes about 3.6%, but if you look, they only have 104 miles of road. Ashwaubenon, that one surprised me. They only spend $500,000 a year. That accomplishes 4 to 5% of their street network, but they're only 110 miles. Bellevue did not report their annual expenditure. They estimate they do 3 to 4% of 71.6 miles. Alloway spends about $3 million. They didn't tell me how much that does, but they only have 55 centerline miles. And Howard's at 1.3 million. That's about 3.5% of their roads at 106 centerline miles. We just identified that we excluded connecting highways, which the state takes care of, and county trunk highways, which are under county jurisdiction. So not included in our analysis because we don't fund those. Before, and this is not a surprise for anybody who sits on this committee, before a municipality can levy special assessments for pavement improvement projects, a public hearing must be held. These public hearings are often well-attended and very controversial. Most taxpayers attending the hearings do not dispute the need for a project, but rather object to paying special assessments associated with it. Several alders have questioned whether or not there might be a better way to fund these projects without levying the assessments. And one idea that's been suggested for consideration is to replace special assessments with the institution of a wheel tax. In August of 2016, Finance Director Don Fuller presented a report to the Finance Committee which overviewed a wheel tax, and I've included a copy of that report to the Finance Committee along with my report. In short, the wheel tax report that indicated that the adoption of a $20 per vehicle wheel tax could generate approximately $3 million in net revenue annually. However, we do wish to advise the committee that due to how vehicle owners report their addresses, up to 30% of that could actually be vehicle owners reporting a Green Bay address that don't live in the corporate city limits. So just for the purpose of our analysis, we assumed 33% of that money was not going to be recovered by Green Bay. and we're looking at a $20 wheel tax netting about $2 million in the city of Green Bay. We definitely don't want to overestimate. During our outreach efforts to other municipalities, James Robbie, who's the Director of Public Works for the City of Oshkosh, provided us with a summary of his investigation regarding wheel taxes. And I've included a copy of that summary along with the memo as well. Most communities who have instituted the wheel tax have set the amount at $20 per vehicle per year, and the use of those funds is restricted to the items listed under state statute. Most often, the wheel tax funds were used by other municipalities to offset the need for special assessments and/or to increase the amount of funding available for street improvement projects. Special assessments levied against adjoining property owners has generated approximately $1.1 million annually over the past 5 years. Again, we're at about $3.1 to $3.3 million in total expenditure, and 1.1 of that has been through the levying of special assessments. Assuming approximately $2 million in wheel tax collection, special assessments levied for street improvement projects could be replaced in their entirety, and there would still be sufficient funds left to increase the size of a street improvement program on an annual basis. What we believe is conservatively estimating an additional $900,000 influx of funding into the street improvement program, City of Green Bay could increase the average annual program by about 30%. However, there are some other considerations that we think need to be taken when looking at this. While the adoption of a wheel tax would eliminate the need for special assessments for street improvement projects and in turn remove the majority of opposition to these projects expressed by property owners, this action alone will not change the amount of road improvement projects completed annually, nor will it increase the percentage of local street projects improved in Green Bay annually. The program size and the amount of streets improved is still limited by the amount of levy-supported borrowing approved by Common Council on an annual basis. So while staff can develop annual and long-range capital improvement programs, these plans are and will continue to be unattainable without a commitment from the Common Council to a minimum amount of levy-supported borrowing allocation dedicated to road improvement projects. Regardless of whether or not a wheel tax or any other alternate funding mechanism is adopted, staff does strongly recommend that the committee recommend and the council adopt a minimum levy-supported borrowing allocation for road improvement projects, allowing the development of a meaningful and attainable long-term plan for maintaining local roads within the city of Green Bay. That is the presentation.
It's a long one there, Steve.
I didn't want to go on too long, but I did want to make sure that we were as complete as possible. Alders who forwarded the communications have been very, very understanding as we've been trying to collect this data and get it out to you, so we wanted to make sure we did right by those who asked the questions.
It is a lot of data. Questions?
Well, it's interesting to see how it compares, from community to community. Now, we assess people for new roads, for reconstruction, for sidewalks, for some utilities.
Initial installation of utilities.
Initial installation of utilities. So when we talk about getting perhaps $2 million in wheel tax, would that just cover the street, the repaving portion of it, or what would it cover?
The analysis that we proposed, that we did, took a look at resurfacing and reconstruct streets. We have not had a whole lot of new road construction that has been assessed. Most developers who are looking at new road construction do it themselves.
What about sidewalks?
We did not include sidewalks in this analysis at this time.
So the plan would be to continue to assess for sidewalks?
That's the desire of the committee and the council. We did not look at it. I believe sidewalks are included as transportation purposes as defined for the applicable use of the wheel tax, so that definitely could be put in there.
How much do we collect in a year?
That I would have to go back and take a look at.
Okay. That's all I got right now.
Oh, no, I just was struggling.
No, you're asking a question. Alderman Vanderleest, any questions for?
We're not approving anything tonight.
We definitely do not have to. I understand this is a lot of information. It needs to go off to the other alders, so.
And if you could, yeah, get all the pages and get it to everyone.
Yep, you are definitely not going to break my heart if you decide to hold this so that you guys can digest it. And yeah, that's
And if you
perfectly
could get the
fine.
information on the sidewalks, that would be good at least to know, to include in the conversation.
Yeah, and about, roughly how many property owners are impacted every year by special assessments,
That's going to be highly variable because
Okay.
depending on the area of the city, sometimes we have
Right.
smaller lots.
Right.
and-
Well, maybe we could, from the last couple of years, how many people are assessing annually,
I knew it, Alderman Steuer.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I appreciate this information. I will read it over, because I think a lot of the other alders will as well. I guess I won't say encouraged, but at least comparing these other communities, what they have and what they do per year. I've been a little frustrated thinking that we only can do 1 to 1.5% of our roads per year. But it seems like a lot of other municipalities go through the same thing. So that's one thing to look at, but we still have more work to do. But I appreciate the input here.
Now, this will be a big discussion in the future at this committee and council, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it would also be interesting, at least to me, I know we've got what we call a pavement management system where we rank our roads.
Right.
And, I know you said before, you might not want to know what it is, but, what are the general conditions of our roads? How many of them do we feel need to be replaced in the next 5, per year, let's say for the next 5 years,
More than we can afford to do.
Okay. Well,
There's a lot out there. There really is.
and with projects that have been delayed because of the postcard surveys and that, are we kind of backlogged?
I don't think so, because we did go back after a recent meeting, we went back and took a look. I think there's only about 10 streets that have been 3 strikes and you're out. So
It's not that big of a list.
it wasn't as big as we originally thought. So that's not been as prevalent a problem. The bigger issue we have, we try to catch streets in that 3, maybe some 4s for resurfacing. There's a lot of 3s out there.
Okay.
And there's a lot of 4s out there waiting to turn into 3s. Not as many, but once we get down into 1 and 2 and we're talking about a reconstruct, then the costs go up substantially higher. So you can't do as many 1s as you can do, it's not a direct 1-for-1 there when talking about the resurfacing. Good, bad, or indifferent, we have a lot of streets that were last completed, last improved in a time period when they used a technology called cement stabilized base, or CSB. And that was, they used cement powder to amend low-quality soils to make them a better quality. So you didn't have to dig out poor quality soils and put new gravel in. Instead, they amended it with cement powder and basically made a low-strength concrete base, okay? CSB streets are fairly easy for staff to identify because they have very large block cracking in them. That's generally that low-strength concrete breaking into larger chunks, and the reflective cracks come through. Okay, so it's not small block cracking or alligator cracking, they're usually bigger. Those streets, CSB streets, typically go from a 9 to a 7 within a matter of just a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. They'll drop from a 7 to a 5, not quite as quickly, but still rather quickly. And in 10 years' time, they're down to a 3, okay? So you go from a 9 to a 3. A resurfacing street, you really don't, sometimes they get 10s, but it's really not a 10, because a 10 is supposed to be a brand-new street, not a resurfaced street. Okay, so you get down to 3 or 4 rather quickly, but then they tend not to get any worse. They've moved around, they've done all the pavement cracking. and then we're on top of it doing the ceiling, and they don't degrade below a 3. So they'll hold on to 3 for 15, 20, 30 years sometimes.
Well, in terms of the state, excess stadium money for infrastructure, I know we've talked about using it for some stormwater, lift stations and things like that. You going to propose using any of it for the streets? And
One of the things that I have staff working on right now is taking a look at candidate streets for resurfacing that we've already identified do not have utility work that needs to be done. So we are starting to generate a list of streets where we simply need to remove the asphalt and replace the asphalt. So those types of projects, yeah, that would be candidate streets that we could utilize that stadium district tax money. Again, we're looking at that, the way we've interpreted that is, one of the things that the money could be used for is debt reduction. Well, this would be debt reduction by not incurring debt. We can actually pay for the project with cash rather than borrowing money and paying debt service on it.
Do you have $1 million in your fund? Is that what we proposed there?
I think right now, for a combination of uses, there was no definition as to who got what or how much. Between infrastructure and park needs, there's a total of about 2.8 committed right now, plus the balance of anything that comes back out of the $300,000 from water utility, and then any funds that continue to be generated. There was 160-some thousand or something that was collected in 2016 that we just got a check for. Those excess funds automatically roll into this as well.
They were trying to talk about putting it in for low business loans, for small business.
But I think that was received and placed on file because
it's not really infrastructure.
Well, I think
in the sense of the word that we're talking, lift stations and street improvements and things of that nature, which I believe are very much needed.
Well, it hasn't really been determined yet what the process would be for making decisions on the infrastructure money. And, I mean, my feeling is that that's what our committee does, that we ought to review that. Now, I'm not sure that everybody is in agreement with that.
I actually, in emailing Dawn Fowler, she recommended that it would be this committee that would handle those requests. If I could, Director Grenier, personally, I like the wheel tax, so I'll be fighting for it. But you had mentioned the council would need to commit to endorsing or implementing a minimum borrowing.
We would recommend that.
Right now, I see we were at 3.6. Does it stay right around that amount, or does it?
It does move, but generally, that would be in years where we have a larger project, a military, a belt.
So that was a higher amount?
Yes.
Okay, so could you come up with a number then? If you
We
want
would be happy to try to come up with.
Could you bring that back as well? We're gonna pile a
Absolutely.
bunch of stuff on you, but.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, as I understand it, we really don't have, at the city, we really don't have a long-term capital improvements program, but this would kind of be, that's kind of what this would be. It would
Well,
say what our-
part
what our
of the reason that
long-term
we don't
plan
have a
would be.
long-term, we used to maintain a 5-year CIP,
Right.
but all we did was we kept shuffling projects
Right.
and moving them down the line because we didn't have the commitment for the funding. So we stopped doing the long-term projections. If we don't have any reasonable expectation of what we're gonna be allowed to spend in any given year, why are we making plans?
Yeah, I don't know that we could bind a future council, but we could at least have plans that this is the desirable level, you know?
Recommendations as well.
Alderman Stewart?
Thank you, Chair. Steve, we had talked briefly in the finance about just road, resurfacing, reconstruction, things on that order with costs and that. In this report, do we talk a little bit about that point I brought up about the sealing of the cracks, not the cracks, but let's say you know, in the roadway, you've got your pieces with,
The crack and joint sealing?
yeah,
No, that's routine maintenance.
that should be, okay, that's not included with any of this.
No, that's, what we're talking about, the way I understood the communications, various communications that came in, were related to road improvement projects, so construction, reconstruction, resurfacing, and then funding for those types of projects. The routine maintenance, we're covering that out of our regular,
Okay.
out of our budgets every year.
You feel that we're at an adequate spot with that? I mean, as
I
far-
think so.
Okay.
We are doing a lot more than we did when I got here, and I think it's noticeable.
Well, I feel that's a very important issue. I mean, if you're talking about prolonging a life of a road,
Mhm.
that's a huge thought.
Right.
So I commend you for that, and we can continue on that effort.
All right, if we don't have anything else?
I would also like to see the list of the 10 or so streets that are on the 3 strikes or out list, because, you know, with turnover in the
Okay.
council, there might be streets in our districts that we don't know about that showed up on that list. And Might be, I would be interested in seeing that, I don't know if anything else.
Mr.
is.
Burnett, can you add that to your list? All right.
And one more thing.
Start.
Steve, you did send me some maps as well on the conditions of roads in my district, and you had mentioned that you're going to do that for the other alders.
Correct.
As well.
I had that on my to-do list under director's report. If we could get all the aldermen that map, I looked at Alderman Sawyer's, very nice.
Well, I have the maps for all
Okay.
12 of the districts, they're in my office, and with budget season and
Sure.
everything else, it's,
Yes, throw 'em in your box.
finding 10 seconds to draft a memo saying, "Dear Alder, here are the maps for your district, if you have questions, please call," has been challenging lately.
Understood.
But that-
Perfect.
that's a good-
All
that's
right,
a great-
anything else on this item?
great
Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to hold this till our next meeting and for all the information to be disseminated to the council members.
Also move.
Motion by Alderman Annick, second by Alderman Vandelis. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 14, Director Report on Recent Activities of the Public Works Department.
Okay, make this one nice and brief for you. This morning, I actually had a very enjoyable meeting with some staff over at the West Side Garage. I was talking with some truck drivers, and we were going through some pre-planning for winter operations, so not too early to start thinking about it. Real good exchange of information. What worked, what hasn't worked, things that I need to be aware of as we're making plans for snow operations. We've had a lot of turnover again. We've had some retirements. So we've got some new folks coming in and joining the Sweet 16 ranks. We've got some folks who are joining winter operations who haven't plowed before. So staff has taken the initiative, both from a management perspective, and some of these employees within streets have been active participants in helping us develop these programs. But we actually set up a road course out on the far northeast side of the city. We've got a subdivision out there that's called Stone Garden off of North Huron, just south of Humboldt Road where Fire Station 7 is. That subdivision was constructed in 2006, and right now it has 1 duplex in it. So not a lot of nice open roads, curves, cul-de-sacs, all kinds of fun stuff out there, and no houses. So what a perfect place for training, okay? Staff was able to take an older retired plow apparatus, and they modified it with casters. So we're able to hook this thing up on a plow truck and get the blade down on the ground, so it's riding that high above the asphalt without damaging the road, riding on wheels. And we took these guys out, we worked with Heavy Duty, who's our wrecker service for doing towing for the city. Heavy Duty is able to provide us with a couple of used but nice scrap vehicles, so no leakers, we didn't have any fluids coming out of them or anything. But if we managed to hit them, it wasn't gonna hurt anybody's feelings. So we staged vehicles out there. We have temporary mailboxes in 5-gallon pails. We staged mailboxes out there, we put recycling carts out there, and had the plow drivers able to go out and test plow under live conditions. You're actually dodging cars and trying not to hit mailboxes and that kind of fun stuff.
Were you a volunteer pedestrian?
No. There's a lot of training that I have no problem subscribing to, but I think my live exercises ended when I was one of the volunteer crash test dummies when we put the Zip and Pippin in.
Okay.
First time I rode the Zip and Pippin, it was me, 5 other people, and a whole lot of sand. So we've done those training exercises, and again, management's been involved, but staff has been extremely involved in helping develop some of these initiatives. So, that interaction between staff and management is really starting to grow, and makes me glad. So we've conducted some of that.
I'm glad to hear that sometimes you hear from workers that there's not as much collaboration, so.
Well, and
it's
I
good
just
to hear.
mentioned to the folks this morning that, when I was out there, I said, I hope you folks understand, I'm trying as best I can. I have made a conscious decision. I'm trying to get out to the garages and be out here with you guys.
That will be appreciated.
More, and they said, we'd like to see you out here more than you are, but you have been out here. You're a more frequent visitor to the garages than either of my 2 predecessors were, and that's not a knock against them, it's just an observation. You are more visible out here, so. Again, we've got these training things going on with staff, and we're looking at continuing that and expanding it out to other divisions within operations. Had some reports back from Matt Heckenleibel, so before we leave operations division, leaf collection, we're in our 2nd round of leaf collection right now. We're hoping to get 5 in this year. One of the discussions I did have with staff this morning, we kind of have a weird fall going on. We haven't had that first real hard frost, so the trees are holding on to their leaves. So we've got a lot down, but there's still a lot hanging on. And I did tell them that, no, I'm not against overtime if overtime is necessary or warranted. If we wind up with a situation where, bang, everything hits the ground, we will work on Saturdays. So we're going to continue to monitor how things are going, and we'll adjust our plans
Is it
accordingly.
typically the day after your garbage that you try and get there for leaves, or is it not at all?
Yep,
that
no,
coordinated?
we are trying
Okay.
to hold on to that, but if you have questions about individual routes, contact Pat Carlson at the East Side Garage. Pat maintains a daily spreadsheet, he knows exactly which garbage routes we're in on a daily basis. Okay, speaking with Mr. Heckenleibel, throughout the course of today, 2 items to report. First of which is, you may understand or may know that we do hire a trapper who goes out to our stormwater management ponds. Burrowing animals and stormwater ponds are a bad combination. They burrow a hole and pretty soon it's not a pond, it's a sieve. So we've been working with a gentleman by the name of Kurt Schrader for the last several years who's done a phenomenal job. Kurt sent in his recent update. In the first 8 days of trapping, he was successful in collecting 98 animals from our ponds.
Usually
Yeah.
one type or a variety of types, or?
Most of the 98 are muskrat. He also was able to trap out 3 woodchuck and 2 skunks from the Burger Street Pond.
These all removals, or?
Yes.
Okay,
He actually-
relocations?
Nope,
If there's a
nope.
rare animal, like.
There is
something-
no relocation
Okay.
benefits offered to these animals. Part of Kurt's fee involves
Okay.
collecting the pelts.
Okay.
So, but again, this is another phenomenal year. Kurt's doing a great job taking care of our infrastructure that we paid a lot of money for. We did have some discussion a couple of months ago relative to the smart cover technology that we purchased. Smart cover is paying off already. We just installed them a little over a week ago. We've got some installed in sanitary sewers and some installed in storm sewers. Storm sewers, within hours of the rain starting this morning, we're starting to pick up first indications of where we're seeing massive inflows. We also were able to determine that in some of our sanitary sewers, we had similar types of peaks. So what that shows us is we've got what we refer to as inflow and infiltration into our sanitary. We've got clear water leaking into our sanitary system, which winds up at GBMSD, and we wind up paying for that, okay? So this type of approach, utilizing these smart covers, shows us where we may have I&I problems. Then we can move those covers around and start narrowing it down to find out where the I&I is happening, so that gives us a plan on how to address attacking that. When we first put the covers in, especially on the sanitaries, Matt and I were having some discussions, and I don't see that particular graph in here. But we looked over in the 9th Street area, and 9th at 14th and 9th at State, we had smart covers installed in 2 manholes over there. And I asked Matt to run the readouts around a Packer weekend. And we were actually able to correlate flows in the sewers to when the first period, halftime, third period, and the end of game arrived. You can actually see it, that there's a massive run. Everybody runs to the bathroom at the break in quarters, and there's a massive peak in the sewer system. So there's all kinds of information that we're going to be able to take a look at and assess trends on. It was a phenomenon that I had heard about in municipalities that have major sporting events. It's actually one of the reasons that the surge tanks were installed at Lambeau Field. So because that was an area that we were interested in looking at anyway from an I&I perspective, okay, let's just run a little experiment to see if the covers were able to detect those types of trends. So a lot of good information being generated from those smart covers that I think are really going to pay off for us in the future as far as helping us identify issues, both sanitary and storm related.
That big tank that they put in at Lambeau Field there, what is the capacity of that one?
Offhand, I don't know, but
That's a private, is that a private setup there?
That's ours.
That's city.
City owns that.
Okay.
Yep.
It's huge. I saw them dig it, it's down there a ways. And they covered it over real nice. What, did they actually cover it with a Span Creek type?
Oh, are you talking about the one that just went in last year?
Yeah.
That's a storm sewer. That's owned by the organization. Team has that.
Okay.
That's private, yes.
Does that just take all the water that comes in that parking lot in that area there?
I believe not only the parking lot water, but I think there's some of the water, yeah, the stands as well.
I didn't see how they covered it. Is it Span Creek covering or?
It's a
Cast in
precast. Oh, it was cast in place?
Cast in place,
Okay,
as I understand
so it was a
it.
cast in place concrete.
Yep.
They actually formed it.
Does it look like it was a big one?
It was, yeah.
So, I got a question, I mean, that's private, you said, but, you know, the city owns Lambeau Field, don't they, as far as the parking lot?
Correct.
So, but that particular part of the project is private?
Correct. Well, the
Packers.
atrium is owned by the team under a lease agreement.
Okay.
So similar type of thing.
Similar type.
Yep.
The project helps us too, less runoff onto maybe.
Absolutely, absolutely,
It's
that's
a
so,
runoff, no, that's what it is.
right. Prior to that detention basin, underground detention basin going in, all that water was uncontrolled and it entered the storm sewers immediately. So what the intent there is detention, hold that water back for a period of time, let that first flush from all the surrounding areas get out of the pipe, and then release this over time so that way the pipe's not inundated.
You know, so that pressure would damage the pipes as well, so over a period of time.
Well, we're not overly worried about that. The pipes are designed to handle that kind of pressure, but the volume, there's just no capacity. And if the pipe is full and there's a head on top of it, until you relieve that pressure on the pipe, nothing else can get in. So if you store some water off to the side, let this go out and then meter this flow back into the system as it can handle it, then you got the capacity and you wind up with no street ponding. That's the hope.
You know, my usual question. Oh, bids, they go out? They going out? Colburn?
The ad for bids was released today, so it will be, first advertisement will be on Monday.
So it'll be okay. Can you forward me the link or the advertisement or whatever it
Sure.
might be, or so I can get it to other interested parties too?
Yep.
Thank you.
How we're doing on the stormwater studies, you know, and there were some that we undertook,
One of the consultants that Matt is working with had just given us, just this week,
Right.
maps which show that they have the various basins modeled, and they indicated existing, like storms we had last summer were indicated on these maps. Then they did projections of what if we change these pipes, will that take care of the storm? So they're in the process of manipulating the model to see what the recommended changes in the sewer system would be.
Modeling has been completed. We're in the process right now of developing the recommendations on how to alleviate some of these issues.
Okay, I was just curious how it was going. Okay.
One question that I was going to ask earlier, but the packets we get, and I think I asked this originally, that we get when we come in, is it possible to get those as part of our packet that gets mailed out? And the reason I ask is then we could actually read this, and I like to be prepared, but when it's just prepared, we come in, and it's the first time we see it as at committee. I like to be ready for committee, not ready at
Some of
committee.
these items, we don't get to staff until
Well,
sometimes late in the day.
It's, the only difference would be those items would then be part of a subsequent agenda.
Because protection and welfare, you have everything, you're ready to go, you have a thick packet, and you have everything all studied, and you're ready, you're fully knowledgeable on everything, you know?
Nope.
Yeah. I don't want to hold anything up, but, I think whatever you got available,
Well,
send it
and-
to us, let us read it, it might make
It would be nice to
meeting
get it a
shorter.
couple days ahead of time.
No,
you know.
that's
They don't have it
perfectly
a couple days ahead of
acceptable to
time.
staff. This is how things were done when I came here 9 years ago, so that's how I continue. If it's desire of the committee to have them,
Well, some of this stuff looks like, could easily be, the
well,
ordinances and things.
we are the only committee who does it this way.
Yeah,
So if you want the packets ahead of time like
I'd
the other
prefer to get
committees
it
do,
ahead of
that's-
time.
That's fine with us.
then I can read it, and I'll know it, and I'll come in, I'll say, for
Sure.
this item, I know exactly what you're asking. and-
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Yeah, I think it might make the meetings go.
Because then we won't be like quick on, because we're listening to you and trying to read through a
Right.
6-page thing. All right, any
Some
other
of the
items?
information you get there, you just have it the same, you just got it, that's the question. Some
And you
of it.
can't avoid that, obviously,
Right.
but.
Yeah,
But
you
if
can't help
if
that.
it's, if there's a timing
You know, it's
factor with it, I don't mind it coming to our meeting
Yeah.
and presenting it here either, but, if, on the other hand, you can send it to us,
Mhm.
send it to us.
That'd be great.
Yeah, like I said, we just did because
It'll make it flow, we'll be more informed.
this is the way it was done when I got here, so we continue to do the same.
All right, anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second?
So-
Motion by Alderman Denning, second by Alderman Vandelis to adjourn. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay.
Who's winning? Mark? Mark, man.
Oh, interesting.
Who? Joe?
Baseball, I don't want to either.
Anybody?
Check it out. Yeah.